All right, welcome to First Universalist of New Madison on this kind of dreary February day. Still no snow, barely below freezing, or maybe just a little bit above, huh?
Wait till tomorrow.
Supposed to snow tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any announcements? Everybody's off and running. Everybody's visiting other places, so not too much going on here. Next week, we're going to do, I think we're going to have a movie next week, because this is Black History Month. So I was going to do something on Black History next month, and I don't know if anybody's heard of the Green Book. The Green Book is a movie about a white guy and a black guy. The black guy is a concert pianist who traveled through the South giving a tour, and the problems they had, this is during the 60s, so you can imagine what that was like. And then his driver was an Italian bouncer from New York City. And the combination, I don't know if you've seen the movie, it's a really good movie, but it's also, the Green Book is actually a publication that was published by a postal worker in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, listing all the places in the United States where black people could be serviced. In other words, they would go to towns in the South and they couldn't get gas, they couldn't eat, they couldn't stay in a hotel. So this guy in his Green Book listed every town or every place in America, or tried to, where black people could eat, where they could get gas, where they could stay overnight. And a lot of places didn't have hotels, so black families kind of did the early Airbnb. They offered a room in their house where black families could stay. So if blacks were traveling from one part of the country to another, this was the Bible that they used to know where it was safe to stay. Because as you probably know, there are towns with sunset laws where if you're black, you're not allowed to be in the town after sunset. It's pretty incredible. And this movie is a real good depiction of that. So we'll go ahead. Hopefully, last time I tried to show a movie, it didn't work. So we're going to try again. This time, I think I'm going to try and do it right directly off the internet rather than try and play it off a CD, because I'm not having much luck with that. All right, any other announcements? Derek will be here in a couple of weeks. Crystal's going to be here in a couple of weeks, so we got some other stuff lined up. Our prelude, Holy, Holy, Holy. occurred to me, the reason nobody's here is they're all getting ready for the big game.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're putting cocktail weenies in the crock pot with grape jelly. Who came up with that idea? Has anybody ever tasted that? Does that taste good?
No.
Grape jelly and weenies, just, I don't know. Okay, chalice lighting, the meaning of the chalice. For some, the chalice cup is a communion cup, freely offered to all who would seek its greater truth. Others see the circle of friendship in its embracing sides, the sacred hoop of its rim, the ambient energy cradled in its basin, the abiding, grounded strength of its pedestal. May all be lit by the fire of spiritual integrity. So too may we each be bathed in the glow of our shared truth and multifaceted and radiant. Our opening hymn is 38. Morning has broken. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day. Something to take to heart. All right, our affirmation. Yes, there's no binary. The road not taken is not a fork. That's too simple a thought. Flipping some coin. Either or. Nope. It's not this or that. Nor, no, or yes. It's nor, neither, and all of the above, and more. The road taken goes every way at once. There, they, them. Go, now, live. This is if you haven't gathered from the confusing word usage there, this is the new pronoun usage that we're getting into with these, them, they. People choose the pronouns they want to use. They may not be him, her. They might be them, they. I still don't understand that, but we're going to work our way through it as we go along. So that's an introduction that I thought was kind of interesting. Today's thing, I kind of got started on, we're talking a lot of politics in the news and a lot of talk about the MAGA belief, the people who have those beliefs. That kind of led me automatically to brainwashing. So that's where I started out. and we've talked about that before, and we'll talk about it again. But I kind of got down off of, got into a different place. So the first thing I want to do is give you a little history. Everybody always quotes our founding fathers. This is James Madison. Everybody knows who James Madison is. Democracies have never been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and in general been as short in their lives as they are as violent in their deaths. In other words, he has pointed out that democracy is a difficult thing to keep, and that's kind of what we're facing today. Some people allude to it as you see on TV, the talk shows. I'm not sure they're alluding to it in a serious enough sense when one of our candidates for president says he would have a dictatorship on the first day, and then says it would only be for the first day, but he would do everything he wanted to do. The comments that are being made are truly frightening if you listen to what these people are saying. And that's kind of where we're going to go through there. But then I got sidetracked. If you watched the news, did you hear about the little Palestinian girl in Gaza? Anybody heard about that?
I didn't hear the detail. I've heard
it. Right, I'm going to give you a little overview of that, and it's really tough to watch. This is an actual phone call. This is Hadid, is a 6-year-old Palestinian girl. They were trying to escape from the north of Gaza to the south of Gaza. Her mother and father and the rest of the children actually walked out. Because she was so young, she was put in a car with her uncle and 4 other relatives, including her 15-year-old cousin, and they drove out in a black Kia sedan. They ran into an Israeli tank on the way down through, and they were fired upon. The only 2 left alive were the 15-year-old cousin and the 16-year-old Hadid. The cousin called the Red Crescent, or the Red Cross in Palestine, and asked for help, said they were trapped in the car with their dead relatives. Could somebody help them? The cousin died within an hour, and the little 6-year-old picked up the phone and begged, and that's what you're hearing in Arabic, begged someone to come get me. Please come get me. I'm afraid. She talked on the phone for 3 hours with the Red Crescent, with the Red Cross in Palestine. They sent an ambulance, and they coordinated with the Israeli army. They said, this little girl is trapped. We are sending an ambulance to this location. When the ambulance got within about 100 feet, they were fired upon by an Israeli tank, and both ambulance drivers, both EMTs, were killed, and the ambulance was destroyed. The little girl was still talking to the lady on the phone, saying, please help me, it's getting dark, I'm afraid. Then on the phone, they heard gunshots, and then nothing more. It took them a week to get to that area after the Israeli army had left the area, and they found the bodies of all the people involved, the little girl, her cousin, the uncle, and all the other relatives, plus the ambulance drivers. A pretty incredible story. Terror happens in any war. Innocent people are killed in any war. But in this war, we get a virtual picture. If you go to the BBC or CNN, the New York Times, every site has different pictures. This particular site had the actual video of, and it goes on longer. They interview the lady that talked to her at the Red Crescent that was on the phone with her for 3 hours, trying to reassure her that someone would try to save her and someone would try to help her. 6 years old, begging, please help me, and was still killed in the crossfire of Gaza. This is a picture, a little better picture of her, and another. The innocence The innocence, the shame of it. And this is still happening in the Ukraine. There are innocents dying all over. Actually, there are innocents dying in America. But this is one of the little pictures that just tears you up when you see these. Okay, so let me go back to where I started. James Madison is the author of the Federalist Papers. When he first wrote his contribution to the Federalist Papers, number 10, he described the greatest threat to our new republic as the growth of a powerful faction that might eventually seize control of government itself. This is James Madison in the 1700s warning about a faction that might seize control of the government. They would tear the nation apart, he worried, by fostering phony differences between people and then pitting them against one another. Does that ring any bells? As dangerous as this faction was, though, he believed that the checks and balances that he and his colleagues had written into our Constitution would prevent any one special interest group from ever rising up and taking over to the disadvantage of everyone else. Among the numerous advantages promoted and promised by a well-constructed union, Madison wrote, none deserves to be more accurately developed than its tendency to break and control the violence of faction. And he was very clear about what he meant by that word. By a faction, he said, I understand a number of citizens, whether amounting to a majority or a minority of the whole, who are united and actuated by some common impulse of passion or of interest, adverse to the rights of the other citizens or to the permanent and aggregate interests of the community. They had an interesting way of writing, very convoluted and very intelligent, but still understandable. Unfortunately, wealthy and powerful factions adverse to the rights of other citizens have arisen several times in American history. And not only in American history, as you know, I've been looking for the rationale, the reason, the cause of dissension in the world all through civilization. And it looks like money is the root of all evil, and we'll explore that as we go along. Each time these factions have torn our nation apart. The most famous was the faction of a few thousand fabulously rich plantation owners in the South who had ended democracy in those states and then reached out to end democracy in the entire nation. They had brainwashed the lower class Southern whites into sacrificing their lives and livelihood to the principles of we are better than blacks and no Yankee is going to tell us what to do. Stopping that authoritarian faction claimed an estimated 620,000 American lives in the Civil War. The most recent faction to rise up and seize control of the nation is a group of right-wing billionaires who bought off enough Supreme Court justices to get a 5-4 ruling in Citizens United that now lets them legally bribe presidents, Supreme Court justices, federal and state legislatures, and state and local judges. If you remember, Citizens United gave corporations the ability to be treated as individuals. They have the same right as people, so they can donate political money and they can stay secret so nobody knows who they are. We've talked about ALEC, the legislative body, the conservative legislative body that prints out blueprints of laws against LGBTQ, against individual voting rights, against any kind of liberal idea that you want. These people are united against it. But the common thread, which I had not talked about before and hadn't thought about before, was the fact that his rich people are financing this. The rich plantation owners financed the Civil War. They're the ones who got all the Southern people together to fight again, and they used states' rights. Nobody ever said, although they said openly at the time it was about slavery, but now nobody will admit it was about slavery. It's called states' rights. If you're aware of what's going on in Texas, we are repeating history again. The state of Texas says the United States federal government is not protecting us against the invasion of immigrants, so we are putting up our own barbed wire we are drowning them in the river rather than letting them come ashore. They state that the state has the right over this federal government to do whatever they want. As a result, things that most Americans want, cheap health care, free education, clean environment, expanded Social Security, fair trade with good union jobs, don't get done by Congress. But the right-wing billionaires, the things they want, tax cuts, deregulation, student debt is kept high and you cannot escape the interest from student debt. They force Americans to pay twice the price of drugs than any other nation in the world. It's a third more than it is in Canada, 2/3 more than it is in Europe. That is all done by the force of the legislature and the people who control the legislature. Tragically, this faction of the morbidly rich Americans has chosen an age-old, time-tested method for rallying support around their wholly owned Republican politicians: fear and the tribal instinct it provokes in many people. Billionaire-owned Fox News relentlessly promotes a fear of invasion of brown-skinned people south of our border, riots by Black Lives Matter, and hordes of homeless people, or Antifa, taking over cities. Billionaire-funded groups with words like moms, liberty, and freedom in their names scare the heck out of white parents, telling them that queer and black people are trying to recruit and groom their children or steal their savings through reparations. The Republican Party relentlessly claims that Democrats are stealing elections through nefarious means, thus explaining away Republican losses while justifying laws to make it harder for working class people or older people or poor people to vote. The side effect of this nonstop Republican campaign of fear dates back a half a century, is the activation of authoritarian tendencies buried deep in our psyches. Some of us are more vulnerable than others, and the most vulnerable are generally people who strongly embrace authoritarian leaders, like who we've already seen: Trump, Greg Abbott, the governor of Florida, and Ron DeSantis, the governor of Texas, and Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. And I guess I qualify with President Biden and ex-President Trump. You make mistakes when you're speaking, you flub things. That may be a sign of old age or senility, or it might just be it's hard to keep track of everything you're saying. So I'm not blaming anybody on that. A Reuters poll after Trump was handed the White House by the Electoral College after losing to Hillary Clinton by 3 million votes. The popular vote went to Clinton by 3 million, but the Electoral College gave the presidency to Trump. It found that fully 16% of Americans had stopped talking with a family member or friend because of the poison that this election had brought into politics. The tendency toward authoritarianism can be activated in these ways is partly biological, genetic, and part environmental, rooted both in the DNA we inherit and how we grew up in the perception of threat in the current day. The biological genetic aspect of human authoritarian nature goes back to the Pleistocene, when many parts of the human-occupied world food was scarce and competition was intense. To survive, humanity had to band together in tribes, and they had to follow one leader. So the tendency was, and the thing that helped tribes survive, was a strong leader who made the right decisions, and everybody followed along without any dissension. That helped in war, it helped in a hunt, it helped in the actual governing of the tribe. The greater the threat, the greater the need for social conformity. We see that in any kind of war. During World War I, World War II, that's what propaganda is for. We had German Americans who refused or who quit using their German spelling of their name, who quit being proud of being German because of the antipathy toward the Germans during World War II and World War I. Japanese who were marked because they were Japanese, even though they were loyal Americans. Dissent was encouraged and allowed in the earlier days, and when the threat is there, then everybody says we have to stand together and eliminate people. Now the threat is being stated that it becomes from the south border, the lower border, and that immigrants are flooding in from Venezuela, from Guatemala, from Mexico. They are described as rapists and killers and drug dealers. Some of this is true, but most of it is not. Most of the drugs that come across in semi-trucks and big planes and boats. They are not carried in backpacks by immigrants coming across the border. The immigrants who come across the border are the ones who are hardworking, taking jobs that Americans won't work. Right now I'm involved with a couple houses in Union City. The Union City trailer park has like maybe 100 or 150 trailers up there. Almost all of them are occupied by illegal Mexican immigrants who work for Cooper, who raise turkeys and chickens in northern Mercer counties. Cooper came down and said they wanted to rent all the trailers for their workers. The people that own the trailer park didn't want to do that. But the people that own the trailer park are getting $1,400 for a double-wide trailer. $1,400. And all of these immigrants, these illegal immigrants, they have false IDs, false security cards. They pay in cash. And in some of the cases, I think my understanding is Cooper has helped paying some of their rent to keep them here as workers. Some people, like ex-President Trump, employ legal immigrants. You can get a work visa, and when you say you can't get anybody to do the job in the United States, you can bring people from Mexico or Yugoslavia or Latvia on a temporary visa, a work visa, and they stay for 9 months or 10 months. So a lot of the recreational type jobs, golf courses, amusement parks, places like that, you'll find people from other countries working here on a temporary visa. Those people are legal because they go home every year and then come back the next year. But the main thing is you can't get people in America to work for low wages at a hard job. The thing in Union City just amazed me the more I find out about that, the amount of money these people are paying and the conditions that they're living in and the work they're doing. So, let me bypass that. And yet, what you hear conservatives say is they do not want any illegal immigrants here, even though our nation is basically running on the backs of illegal immigrants, landscape artists or landscape workers, construction workers, roofers. If you watch roofing crews, look closely when you go by. About 80% of them are Mexicans, and they do a fantastic job. They can put a roof on in a day, tear off the old roof and put a new one on. They're almost like, it's hard to tell sometimes if you're looking at Amish or Mexicans, because the Amish work as a group together too. They're like ants crawling all over the roof, and they get it done. But they do good work, and they're hard workers, and they're honest, 99% of them. All right, and then the way humans are built and enforce social conformity over the millennia is through something psychologists and political science call authoritarianism. That's how people are made to do it. They basically scare people into doing whatever the leader says is the right thing to do. And that's what I talked about with Fox News. If you watch the Chirons, that's that little thing that runs across the bottom of the thing. It is constantly talking about how dangerous it is and how terrible it is and what a threat we face. Most estimates suggest about 18 to 20% of us are born super vulnerable to authoritarian leaders. It's a dispositional thing, part of the way we're wired. It's what we've inherited, and it can be moderated or exaggerated by how safe we feel during the years we're growing up. The emphasis now, and that's 15 or 18 to 20% are susceptible to this, more susceptible than anybody else. That kind of lines up with the population that votes super conservative, up to 40%. And that number has gone up, and the reason it's gone up is because there is a constant drumbeat of how dangerous things are, how many terrible drugs they are, how many terrible people they are, how dangerous things are going to be in the future. This is real stuff, and it isn't a bad choice your friends or family members make. It's wired in. It's called being an authoritarian follower. Research finds that people inclined to right-wing authoritarianism also react more strongly to stress than other people. They are more easily disgusted by things like body odor, more likely to be germaphobes, more likely to be frightened by the prospect of illness. Sometimes you see this in people who are fastidiously clean and neat about their homes and appearance. These are inborn tendencies carried in our genes. Studies of identical fraternal twins and the inclination toward right-wing authoritism has highlighted these correlations. If you've seen the twin studies, twins can be born, adopted out to different families in different parts of the country, different economic basis, different historical basis, different environments that they're living in, and yet twins grow up almost identical. Even they are identical in appearance, but they grow up identical in behavior. They wear the same kinds of clothes, the same color of clothes, they cut their hair the same way, their attitudes are the same, the jokes they like are the same, the songs they sing are the same. It's really incredible what the genetic power is in the imprint that makes people what they are. And yet there are differences. If you're raised one way in a household that's open and affirming and accepting, as opposed to a household that's very domineering and strict, that will have an effect on the way you raise your kids or the way you treat other kids. That's when we talk about abuse in a house creates abuse in the next family, in the next generation. If kids learn that being beaten and abused and insulted is the way that you act as a parent, then that's the way. Even if they say, I'll never treat my kids this way, for some reason, that's what they fall back on in a crisis situation. So I had a lot more on this, but I think I'm going to put it into a separate discussion some other time. This is a lot of material to us to cover in one time, and it's pretty discouraging with Hadid. So I think we're going to end it there. Comments, questions? Okay. All right, joys and concerns.
Keep Bob Cox family in your hearts and prayers. Carol Cox passed away this past week.
And
sister-in-law.
New Madison?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Greenville,
the Cox family.
Yeah.
One for all our members who aren't here. Lou and Denise are in California with their kids. I heard from them on the email, but I haven't heard anything about how their family's doing in Northern Ohio. I know the father and the mother were both having medical problems and in hospice. Mike's in Florida. Hopefully he's having a good time. Temperature's probably not too much different than it is here. 60s yesterday. Yeah. 60s in February.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous, people.
I saw a few convertibles even.
What's that?
I saw a few convertibles driving around.
Really? The scariest thing, who knows the scariest thing that's popping out of the ground? Daffodils. My daffodils are coming up.
Yeah.
The second week in February, my daffodils are coming up. So I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, daffodils can provide snow, but usually they're kind of short-lived. I don't want my daffodils dying in May.
Groundhog says early spring.
Yep. Yeah, the groundhog always knows.
No, he doesn't.
Chaz and Paula are in London, Ohio with family. Hope they have a safe trip. Appreciate them turning the heat on. They turned the heat on before they left. So, and we'll still need heat for a little bit longer. We still have our sunflowers for Ukraine. As I say every week, it's kind of a stalemate. The President Zelensky has replaced his top general. Interesting political choice. The top general was loved by his troops. The guy who's replacing him is not so well loved, but the top general promised that he would advance into the Russian-occupied territories and take it back, and he didn't take it back. So we don't know all the little undercurrents of what goes on in politics, but it's a scary time over there. Palestine, over 28,000 killed in the Gaza Strip and in Palestine. They said 10,000 are under the age of 18, and that's not counting the women who are over the age of 18 who are killed. So the estimates I've heard, out of the 28,000, at least half and maybe more than half are women and children have been killed. The Israelis are still adamant that they are going to wipe out Hamas. Hamas is still adamant they're not going to give back the hostages unless the Israelis pull out. So both people with power stand high up on the hill and eliminate people down in the valley who have no choice. If the people in the valley could vote, I'm sure they would vote for peace on both sides. But they have no vote, and that is part of the power of authoritarianism. Hamas took power in Palestine. They got like 10 or 20% of the vote, and they killed off their opponents and basically took power as a dictatorship. Netanyahu has pretty much done the same thing. He has created an alignment of super conservative Jews who go so far as to say that Palestinians should all be thrown out of Palestine. There should be no more Arabs living in Israel. And part of the problem is they're surrounded by Arab countries who will not accept any Palestinians as refugees. Egypt will not let Palestinians come in. Lebanon will not let them come in. They are trapped in this hellhole with the Israelis trying to eliminate them and no one else trying to save them. That is one of the scarier aspects, one of the scarier suppositions or dream things, horror nightmares that people are creating, that the Israelis are actually trying to kill all the people there to eliminate them. When they say they are very careful on their bombing and they have to do it because of the tunnels, the primary excuse is Hamas uses ambulances to transport weapons and fighters. So the Israelis say then that justifies us in blowing up ambulances. And how do you tell the difference between an ambulance that has wounded people in it and paramedics and an ambulance that has fighters in it and rockets? You can't tell from the outside. So there is a justification on each side, I guess, but what it amounts to is the people in the middle are the ones that suffer. And I have no answer for that. Let's see. We'll go in more about the refugees coming across the border. Now there's razor wire. There have been a woman and 2 children have been drowned at the border because they couldn't get through the river. The federal ICE forces, the Border Patrol, the state of Texas is not allowing them to help save these people. The National Guard people are just standing there and watching them die. It's pretty incredible because National Guard people are just regular people. They're not professional soldiers, they're regular people. And when you talk about an authoritarian government that gives you orders, yes.
The National Guard goes through the same training as the Army. There's no distinction between the two until they go back home.
Right.
And it says U.S. Army on their uniforms.
But National Guard basically work and live in the communities where they serve.
They're still professional soldiers.
And they're called up for a short-term, well, if they serve overseas, they can be there for a long time. But when they're called up in a state like an emergency, like a hurricane or a tornado or a flood, the National Guard is there. They are mobilized. They give up their day jobs, put on their uniform, and pick up the federal equipment and go out and help people. And that's what the National Guard is known for in the United States, is helping people. When the National Guard shows up, it's because they're there to help. That's not what's happening in Texas. And probably that's not what's happening in Florida. So anyway, for the immigrants and people trying to come to the country, and immigrants are not blameless. I'm not trying to say there's no blame. If you saw the news in New York, an immigrant from Venezuela, which there tends to be a problem. The Mexicans who come to the United States tend to be hardworking and tend to go back home and see their families and support their families. The Guatemalans, the Venezuelans, some of the ones from South America, there's some real gang problems down there. And if you saw the news, a 15-year-old Venezuelan immigrant who's been in the country a couple of months shot a woman in Times Square as he tried to shoplift some items. He was arrested. Some other immigrants from Venezuela beat up 2 police officers who were trying to arrest a guy who was causing trouble and pounded him. And those guys will be arrested and they will be deported. There's no sanctuary for people who are criminals. But you cannot lay the blame on the entire group for the actions of a few, which is what we say over and over again. And that is the opposite of what you hear from the more conservative news outlets. All right, one more candle for those hopes and fears that we haven't talked about. if anybody needs help or has a problem, I'm sure Derek would be available. All right. Our offering is I've Got a Crush on You. If you have something to share, please do. If you need something, let us know. Closing hymn is 39, Bring, O Morn, Thy Music. Curly has been training really well all winter long and was just ready to qualify when his leg started to swell up. So we did an ultrasound and he's got a 15% tear. They said we could rest him for 6 months and see how that does, whether it heals up again. What we're going to do is take him to a specialty clinic down in Xenia and see if they have any different recommendations or anything else that we can do. He was doing so well too, so it's really disappointing. But if his leg goes bad, I will have my carriage horse. So
it doesn't sound good.
It doesn't sound good for his racing career. So. All right, extinguishing the chalice, the truth that makes us free. May the truth that makes us free and the hope that never dies and the love that casts out all fear lead us forward together till the day breaks and the shadows flee away. Our Between the Ears is not exactly between the ears, but it is in celebration of the Arabian horse and the Arabian costume. This is an Arabian horse in the standard costume. Our postlude in honor of Valentine's Day. Give you a preview, if it plays. This is the trailer for the Green Book.
I've never had fried chicken in my life. You could go on a fried chicken. You have a very narrow assessment of your tone. Yeah, right. I'm good. You'll be interacting with some of the wealthiest people in the country. This is my feeling that your addiction could use some finessing. Why you break my balls? Because you can do better as dialogue. In the Lord.
Saw Dr. Sherlock play with you. Like a genius, I think.
Come on, take it easy. Gotta run out to the grease on my blanket. Ooh, I wanna get grease on my blanket. This gentleman says that I'm not permitted to dine here. I'm afraid not. I said, smile and shake their hands like that. Because it takes courage to change people's hearts. What are you doing? What? Nigga, dear Lord, sometimes you remind me of the house. You know this is better, right? With this guy. The distance between us is breaking my spirit. Falling in love with you was the easiest thing I have ever done. Kiss, kiss, kiss. That's like climbing a cow and the shopping coach. So, that's good. It's perfect.
It's actually a true story. The black guy is a concert pianist who was just a magician on the piano and lived above Carnegie Hall. This was in the 60s and was not allowed to play in Carnegie Hall. One of the more interesting things, I didn't even know there are apartments above Carnegie Hall that are rented out, but he was not allowed to play in Carnegie Hall. But he did play these places in the South, and it's talked about in the movie. They even had the Harlem Globetrotters come down and travel through the South and play basketball games. They were not allowed to eat at the regular restaurants. They had, and they were stay at the regular hotels. Imagine what that would be like. The guy who was his driver is Tony Lippitt, something Italian name. He was basically a racist when he started out, but the two guys spending all this time together created a real relationship that lasted. Actually, this one takes place over 6 months. The actual trip was over like a couple of years because they went back and forth to the South. But they remained friends for the rest of their lives. Both of them did. So as a true story, the things depicted in here about not being able to be in the town, you saw him hitting the cop because the cop called him a nigger lover. Some just pretty interesting stuff that actually happened. This is stuff that really happened during the civil rights era. So you're welcome to do snacks. We'll do that after church next week. Hopefully I can make it play. There are donuts, always donuts, and always stuff to eat. So have a good week. If you need anything, let us know.
Next service.
Yes. Yes, we can do that. Yes. He shall overcome. Yes. Oh, okay. Well, Ty didn't even make it today, man.
What's that?
Ty didn't even make it.
No, nobody made it today. I thought with the weather being halfway decent, the girls would have made it.
Ty'd always come in about 10 after 10. And
Yep. That was interesting. Is his grandson, does he live down around Dayton? Because he was asking about the Dayton church.
I really don't know where he lives. I don't know.
It's interesting that he came, and it was interesting.
Going to be moving down there, or I don't know.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I didn't get a chance to talk to him that much, so. Plus, I didn't want to scare him. What, new blood?
Yeah.
Please come.
I didn't realize Ty had a grandson that old.
I didn't.
I kind of thought, I still think it was David, his son, is like a kid. I don't know. So
Well, between you and me and the gay post, he still kind of acts like a kid.
yeah. But
I guess I better. There's hot water for coffee, and there's the instant coffee from Folgers that's pretty decent. You don't have to have a jar of instant. I can't justify buying it for myself. What if I say, oh, I'm buying donuts from the church? Tara says, oh, well, that's nice of you. I'm so generous.
But it is nice of you.
Sees nothing on giving and taking against it.
Yeah, you watch slogs.
So I did very good eat. I changed the spirit.
Oh,
it does the
Practices.
art.
That's what I did.
But that's part of what, in my research, people have studied this, and you can't use intelligence, you can't convince these people by facts.
Was anyone killed?
What you have to do is befriend them and make them a part of your tribe or you're part of their tribe, and then you just keep adding, like, oh, did you see what it said about stuff like that? So he said, what's her name, Nikki Haley's husband is a National Guard serving overseas, and he said, where's Nikki's husband? He's gone, he's a loser, you know. And the guy's like serving in the military. And anybody who's conservative would say, you can't insult people serving in the military. So that's what you do.
That's what his,
That's his thing.
Insulted POWs.
That's
You know, I mean,
that's his version of.
Yeah, the guy from Arizona.
I mean,
But they say what you have to do is befriend them and kind of bring them and give them the facts slowly, and
Change the process.
yeah, I can't do that. I can't say I agree with you on this and this and this. I don't want to get as far away from those people as I can. So that's the problem with the solution.
That's his opinion of veterans and all military.
Yeah, and because he had his own spurs and ducked out of the military.
Well, now who are you talking about specifically?
So,
Oh, Trump.
Yeah, he insults everybody.
he's a horrible.
He is just awful.
But there's people who support him are decent people, more or less.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to figure out is what's going on with these people.
And how they interpret what he says. Yeah, he's talking about dictatorship his first day, he's gonna pardon everybody that was involved in January 6th and all the other trials and things.
And that other ball headed is hopefully that will get rid of the one from Colorado or whatever. It sounds like she's not going to do very well. Forbid that she's moved.
He's just
Districts and came in fifth place.
Yes,
Yeah. So
she kind of shot herself in the foot there when she went to the play and was making out in the hand with the guy right in public with people on video.
Yes.
I mean, geez.
Is there a case where someone changed parties and still running on the tickets?
the mayor from Trotwood.
Got nominated in one party and then switched parties now before the election.
Oh, I missed that.
The mayor from Trotwood changed the Republican Party. She's running for commissioner in Sumner County, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she got the nomination of the party she did, and then she changed parties.
Yeah.
And she's still a candidate. Now, how does that work?
Yeah, I don't know.
That doesn't sound right.
Is there anyone running against her?
I
I
don't
think
know.
there's another Republican that's going to start primary. I think, yeah. I think they got two open seats down there.
Crazy things happening.
There are crazy things, right?
Scary things happening. Scary.
Yes, it's
You have a
very
number of
frightening.
people that say, I'll play another thing for you sometime. They interviewed people and said, would you rather have Donald Trump as a dictator for the next 4 years or Joe Biden as president? And all these people said, oh, I'll take Trump as a dictator. And the guy said, do you know what a dictator is? Do you know what it means to have a dictator?
If you take Trump, you're going to have a dictator anyhow.
Well, and it just blows me away that people follow him.
I know that. As a businessman, he's become successful because he screwed a lot of people that he dealt with.
He never paid his taxes.
Yeah.
Well, and his children, are they going to be as bad? But his kids, are they as bad as he is? I think they are.
You just don't hear about them.
I think the daughter's trying to disassociate herself with boys on.
That whole thing is, how weird is that though? When you're talking conservatives, he's got his hands all over his daughter. He said if she wasn't my daughter, I'd be dating her.
Yeah.
I mean, just the guy's sick in the head and he's telling us exactly what he's like, and we're just sitting there saying, okay, that's not it.
Yeah, taking on.
Yeah.
What bothers me is the rally Madison
There's all these people, you know, I always thought we're level-headed people, and they're praising Trump.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I don't know how, yeah.
We're simplifying it.
Well, that's part of this totalitarian mentality, that people who don't like any kind of threat, and they're afraid that the country's going down the tubes, and that's the primary one. People keep telling them this replacement theory, that the Democrats are importing Mexicans, and they're gonna be the majority, they're gonna take over the country, and white people won't have any power anymore, and it's just the same thing they did in the South, when the plantation owners in the South said, if you let black people vote, look how many black people are in the South, they're gonna take over the South. And they scared the white people into saying, okay, we're gonna join the Confederate Army and fight for independence, when it's they're fighting against their own political and their own economic interests. But you can scare people into doing anything.
I keep hearing those people say that the illegal aliens, they draw on Social Security, they got the right to vote and all that stuff.
Yeah, they can't.
I know.
They have illegal, they've got fake IDs, that's the sad thing, they pay into Social Security, because all these Mexicans that are working for Cooper Farms, they all have fake IDs. So Cooper Farms holds money back from their check and deposits it into the Social Security thing, but they can never take it out because they don't have a real ID, they're not a real person. So they're actually giving us money every week that they work, they're giving us money. But these people keep thinking, oh, they go to the hospitals and they get free medical care. No, they don't. They pay for their medical care. They're not on Social Security. They don't have any insurance.
Well, then Cooper's got some kind of a political payoff there or something, or they're paying somebody off to turn their heads.
Well, it's the same as the whole wealthy Republican thing. It's just like Trump being totally against immigrants and then hire a bunch of immigrants to work in his golf courses. I mean, the hypocrisy is like giant H. And you can't convince people that it's. I try these guys that I work with. I try and say these are the facts, and they just don't believe it.
there's Mexicans that live down here, in Madison, you know, there's 22 of them in one apartment, that's not even city. Complain about it.
We got some Mexicans in here in the United States.
It's a apartment that
West of the edge of Ohio, really.
And they don't usually cause any trouble. I mean, you can say, as tons of Mexicans, you don't hear about people having fights and robberies or anything like that.
if they stand outside when it's time to work, somebody picks them up and they bring them home.
I know my uncle up around the Union City area, who farmed for a long time, you know, back in the 40s, 50s. He always had migrant workers to help him on the farm there as far as picking tomatoes and stuff like that, you know. I know he used to have to go into Union City on Saturday night and get his boys out of the bar fights. He had like a house there on his farm that he let the family stay in, you know, whatever.
Well, the tomato canning place in Indiana. Accolades. They've got an actual trailer park set up there.
Okay.
Where it's come down.
Over by 59 Phillipsburg, that nursery.
That was wrong.
You see them driving the tractors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the guy who was telling me about the trailer park in Union City says Brown is another one that has tons of immigrants, illegal immigrants, and he's got housing for them all over the place.
Is that right?
Yep.
Wow.
Young fellow.
Even Spencer Forrest, or Spencer Landscaping, one of the, somebody, the boyfriend or the husband or whatever, they pay for his permits and all that stuff, like $10,000-$20,000 a year. And then they pay him like $20 or $30 an hour just to have dependable help. They can depend on it every year.
Well,
Goodness.
Well,
Have a good week, Roberta.
well, you two finished.
I'll sure try.
See you next week.
There's a group of Mexicans that live in the old bank, portion. Yeah, and they seem to have moved out, and then there's a new group that live in the upstairs.
Really?
But in the evenings, when you walk by and look in the window, you see where they left their mattress up so the women use the ball during the day, and they put them down at night.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize what it's like before,
Yeah.
but, you know, it's like the Depression days, I mean, people knew how to live. You know, they do, and, we're still proud people and still had a sense of dignity about it. I mean, just because you're poor doesn't mean you're, a dirtbag or scum or anything.
But they cause so much trouble in Madison, people don't realize they're here.
I didn't know. I didn't know yet.
I walk.
Oh, okay.
We see a lot of things when we walk.
Oh, okay.
There's a walking track that starts at the front door and goes all the way around town.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't work 8-hour days, and people work all day.
Yeah.
And they go in the morning, and they come home at sunset.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll get like the thing full of Amish guys. Well, they'll be, where they're going to park at the barn somewhere for somebody or something.
Yeah, they do barns, they build additions on houses. Actually, they're on 121 South Francisco, I don't know who owns that, but they must have a lot of money, they got that horse training facility.
Oh, yeah.
That old brick house.
I know.
Yeah.
They built that horse barn for number one, and now they built an indoor arena. And there's another one on 121 North Racketsville, where the guy's a truck driver.
Big silos or the big,
Yeah. And
The story I heard on that is they were going to build it in Trumbull County, but Dark County is much more favorable to them being there.
really,
Yeah.
I thought Trumbull County was pretty favorable to all that stuff, maybe not.
Dark County is more favorable.
But that's,
I heard it's something like chicken feed.
yeah, that's what
It's for Cooper Farms, I think, isn't it? Or
otherwise, it's a feed processing plant, I don't know who's it is, they haven't said yet, probably, Coopers, I don't know who else would do it.
That's a lot of chicken feed.
There's a lot of chicken feed. Well, see, my problem is I live down the road from there. But that's, each one of those bins holds like 150 bushels, 1,000 bushels. And that's like 150 truckloads. A semi-truck holds 1,000 bushels in a trailer. So to fill that or empty it means there's going to be a line of semi-trucks. It's going to look just like going to the alcohol plant.
Yeah.
There's going to be a line of trucks. And see, 127 is 2 lanes. 121 is a single lane. You imagine
Yeah,
that?
it's twisty through there.
Yeah, and there's no passing. And it's
And no cell phone.
yeah, actually, no cell phones too, and there's hills, so a semi-truck loaded is gonna take a while to get up to speed, so it's gonna be a nightmare down there when that happens.
That's okay. We'll go to Christian by way of early night. My daughter works for Irwin Brothers. It's a big part of their business is going to the ethanol plant. Delivering fuels to gas stations and taking the ethanol plant to the terminals.
Yeah, there's no railroad there, is there, the ethanol plant in Greenville?
There might be a line that runs over there.
Because I've never heard of an ethanol plant that didn't have a railroad, because that's.
The railroad, crosses underneath 121, it crosses underneath 127, it crosses Ohio Street. It goes,
Oh, that's right, yeah,
it goes,
I bet that does go up there,
yeah.
because I don't see any tanker trucks on 127, which means they must be hauling it by railroad.
Well, there are black tank cars that go on that line that crosses.
Right. Yeah, because there's the elevator right there on Ohio Street too.
Yeah, it connects up, somehow it connects going north. To,
Oh, I know. That's exactly what it is. Remember the derailment in Greenville? That's what that was. Down there on 49 and whatever where that sharp curve is, if you go to the, go past the May right place, go straight and then turn right and go around the curve. That's where those tank cars derailed. And that day was it's a Roger Gorman Railroad, whoever the guy's name is, the private railroad. Because I've seen trains go through there and they would go like 5 miles an hour and they're pushing tank cars. That's where they're coming from, is the other one. And that's where the derail was right there. And the place closed at the street bridge for 3 days while they put the tracks back together and got the towers in the way. Lucky none of them popped over and leaked anywhere.
That part of it goes down past Ohio, parallel to Ohio Street.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess I'm going home. I don't want to go to work today. I don't want to work today. I heard that this last couple of days was so good, I am so sore.
Well, I've still got more footwork, so that's what I'm trying to do is get started on my taxes. Take the big boxes, receipts, and start sorting them out. I don't know why I don't do that every day when I get home. I'm too lazy, so I gotta do it all at once. So
What was this receipt for?
I write on the receipt. On the top, I write what it's for and what the amount was, so I don't have to try to read down through the receipt. But if I just put, I'm gonna start, I think there's a deal for your cell phone where you can take a picture of something and it like files it if you're.
Yeah.
Because if I could do that, then I could just throw them in a box and I wouldn't need it. Because if I had them filed, that would also help me if it actually put them in the place where it goes, then I would have it already there. And I think it even puts the amount and everything else in. So I'm gonna investigate that and see. I'm not very good at finding stuff on my computer, but something like that would just save my life.
I didn't find my wife's car. It's got a bad clock spring.
Clock spring? What's a clock spring?
It's in the steering wheel. It used to be an actual spring that looked like a clock spring. But, so, for all those controls on the steering wheel, okay, it's got, and an airbag, it's got a ribbon cable. And it's wraps around in there, so it allows the steering wheel to go. And then, the joints, eventually it breaks off. And she was having troubles with her airbag, and the passenger side was always saying the airbag was off. Yeah.
That's what I'm doing now. My truck that I had wrecked like 5 years ago, finally got all the parts put back together, got the airbag parts, and I had to actually, they don't make them. They don't make the impact sensors for the old trucks.
Okay.
So I had to go to the junkyard and get one. But I'm taking it down to Subaru next week. And, because I told them they wouldn't fix it because it was hit the right front end and crushed the cable and the harness. And they say you can't repair the harnesses, that's not the safety, people don't allow that. But they said if you repair it and bring it back to us, then we'll install everything. So we put everything back together and we have continuity to all the leads and our continuums. So I'm gonna take it down. In fact, the guy that helps me, I said, I don't want you putting the airbag in. Because I want someone that's gonna save my life. I want somebody who knows what they're doing. Not somebody.
They just plug in.
Well, and if you, yeah. So,
Yeah, you discharge the battery out and you discharge the computer.
right. And it has to be reset after the impact, you have to reset it, so. I'd rather have them do it officially so I know it's done right.
I bought one of those $600 scan tools so I can do a lot of stuff.
Oh, jeez.
Then I go to them great Cherokees with all that electrical in them.
Yeah, it's like, no, Well, that's like, even like Windows drive me crazy, but all that stuff we bought an old van from a guy that wouldn't do money, it was a front end collision, we fixed the front end of that one in. And we tried to get a radio, I don't believe get a radio, it's like, you have to put it has like theft things on it, so we bought a used radio and put it in, so.
You have a program, VIN.
You have to program the VIN underneath, so we had to take it to the freaking dealer and pay them $100 to put our $48 used radio on. It's just-
I got the boiler turned off. Too.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So,
See ya.
Yep.
my schedule does a lot of that stuff. It's bi-directional, part of the LVD talks about that.
Oh, wow. I just bought the $39 one that tells you what the code is. So it lets me cancel the code.
What I tell you the code is, you can tell this sensor to turn on or off. It tells you a lot more stuff than when the scan will tell you the code.
Right.
This thing will tell you the code and will tell you the values.
Well, that's why the dealership charges you $100 just to put the name tool on.
Yeah, you pay, yeah, dealership, you're paying for all that flash they have there displays, and you gotta pay all the salaries and the insurance, and, yeah, you understand the business. Gee, it doesn't cost me, this much to rent this place today.
Well, it's like, it's like heavy equipment. Once you buy your equipment and get it paid for, that's why you can see bulldozers setting for 8 months of the year, and then they use them for a couple months of the year, but at $200 an hour, it doesn't take long to pay your equipment off. So, and you don't have the equipment, you can't get the job, so it's kind of, which is why you need to get that, figure out what to do with that lift. Because I've got roofs to paint and trees to trim.
Well, I'm thinking, I gotta redo that whole panel, because weather's done the car, get a piece of sheet metal, a little computer case or something, put it on that. But I figure, I would just put a French cross tag on terminals, that motor controller, get the motor running, because somebody flipped the switch and that's the legs.
Yep. Or like you said, we'll just pop the mechanical part loose.
I say we try to live to the legs with electric. That's a lot easier, not much work. And they'll go down. They'll go down.
I wonder if we get that, the level indicator, the safety indicator, interface or whatever it's called.
The tilt switch.
Yeah, if we get that, if it's broken, if we get either a replacement or get it repaired, maybe that's what's holding the flash from going up.
I always hate to go with maybes.
I start with maybe and work my way down to positive, so I know that's.
I like to work down to positive, and I haven't found positive